Good afternoon. Welcome to the Embedded Executive Podcast. My name is Rich Ness. I am the Executive Vice President of Open Systems Media. I lead the content team for embedded computing design. Podcast usually has one guest, but we just couldn't find any way to split these guys up today. So we have two guests. We have Maureen Helm and we have Kumar Gala, and they are with Analog Devices. They both carry the title of Distinguished Engineer in the Software and Digital Platforms group. How you guys doing?
Doing well?
Doing
Good,
well, thank you.
good, very good. So let's start this with a weird question that I ask you guys. Our topic here is supposed to be about all the digital things that you guys are doing. The name of the company is Analog Devices. Why am I going to Analog Devices for digital stuff? Who wants to take that?
I'll take a stab at it. So, yeah, I know it's always an interesting conversation with customers or others on, hey, you work at Analog Devices and you guys are doing digital. And I think, one of the aspects for ADI is kind of, we live in that, physical to digital transition. And I know edge is a term a lot of people use it in different ways. And so forth. And we kind of use it to mean that kind of space where, literally you're going from the physical world to the digital world. And as much data as gets going on in that space, we kind of recognize that, there's a need for doing some level of digital processing in that space. And it's not, I'll say, new to ADI. We've been doing DSPs for a number of years, going back 10, 15 plus years at ADI. So wouldn't say that digital is new to ADI. But I think we're focusing kind of where it makes sense and where we think we can provide value. As we just realize, not everything's going to go to the cloud. You got to do some level of compute, some level of analysis, whether it's power, latency, real-time nature, right there at the edge. So.
Okay. Now, when we're talking digital, what I'm referring to is actually what you guys are doing with CodeFusion Studio, which is a fairly new endeavor. How's that going? Well, before I say that, would you just describe for the audience what that is exactly? Because I don't assume that everybody knows this.
Yeah, so CodeFusion Studio, we launched it a few months ago at the kind of first embedded world in North America. And it's our kind of take on sort of, I'll say, an IDE environment based on VS Code around kind of our digital platform. So enabling, SOCs as a starting point and, starting kind of from a configuration tools, which are pretty typical in this space, but then trying to grow this in a couple of different manners compared to what you may see from other vendors in the space, right? So one is we're trying to make the tools open. And the intent there to start with is to say, hey, look, we understand with a lot of these products, there's a long life cycle, 10, 15, 20 years. Silicon vendors move on. We all move on to other projects, other activities. By having open tools, that it kind of always gives an insurance policy to the customer that if there's some issue, some bug, they need to run it on some old system, whatever that may be, that they have that access, right, if need be, in addition to fixing bugs. And then we'll see kind of what kind of communities that may drive over time as we go forward. And then I think the other kind of big aspect that we're looking at is trying to really be a cross-platform solution, right? We recognize, especially as we look at AI and developers, you've got more people working on Macs, CI systems under Linux, and then IT systems under Windows. And so we live in a world, obviously, where there's, kind of have to manage all different OS variants for tools to run on.
Okay. Now, there's other folks who have similar, if that's the right word, IDEs like this. What are you guys doing that's very different from what some of the other folks are doing?
Sure. So I think, as I mentioned, kind of we're looking to be open. I think the other aspect is we're really trying to, focus on sort of the debug aspect of tools and recognize, some of, having, Maureen, myself, others that have been working on digital platforms for 20 plus years of understanding kind of the challenges that a developer focus, is reaching, or running into, and kind of recognizing, how do we make configuration of these systems that are very complex easier? We're getting into, significant heterogeneous systems where you have, a mix of ARM cores, DSPs, other type of processing units, and how to sort of separate and have tools to help manage the configuration, the separation of those software domains, and so forth. And so that's one of the difference, some of the differences we're looking at kind of compared to the others that we see.
Okay. You've mentioned open a few times. What does that mean to you guys?
Maureen, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So, as Kumar touched on, from a CodeFusion Studio perspective, and that being open source, I think the other avenue is actually supporting open source communities in terms of embedded firmware that are actually running on our devices. And so, when it comes to things like Zephyr, like open, like Linux, we're looking at enabling our products in the upstream. So not just, doing, private distributions or custom distributions of those parts, but also contributing that support into the upstream community, participating in the upstream community, as well as in terms of like maintainership roles and technical steering committees and things like that.
Okay. Are you guys doing anything out of the ordinary to help foster these communities? Because they sometimes need fostering.
Out of the ordinary. I guess maybe our perspective is slightly different, I'd say, than some of the other players in these communities. I mean, it's become much more diverse over the last couple of years, but at least from the Zephyr community's perspective, there's a lot of sort of SoC vendors that are kind of driving that community. And while, we are looking at growing our digital platforms, we also have a very large, analog portfolio. And so we're kind of looking at it also from an analog enablement perspective as well.
Is the expectation that the innovation will come from Analog Devices or from the community or both?
Both.
Okay. In what way, and what are the things that Analog is doing to help the community do that?
I think it's finding areas of collaboration in the community. Folks that are using our parts in the communities. Collaborating with customers if they're interested in working in the upstream as well. And so I think it's a couple of different areas in terms of various working groups that have different focuses, but also in terms of enablement across different families of parts.
Okay. Anything anecdotal you can share that you've learned from the community? Because it is a two-way relationship, obviously.
I mean, I think the challenge that, in enabling upstream open source is time frame is always a challenge, right? And in the sense that, we want to, have some sort of predictable delivery timeline, for as we launch new products. And so I think that's maybe one of the challenges, but in addressing that challenge, we are sort of building our open source muscle and, developing internally in sort of open source manners. And so, I think that sort of eases the way in terms of timeline and schedules.
Okay. What are some of the things we can expect to see going forward?
You can expect to see, broadening product support in the upstream. We intend to continue growing what we've seeded over the last year. We started with some initial SoC enablement for our Maxim 32 device portfolio, but we're expanding device driver support, we're expanding variant support, and then also into our analog space. And so that gets into things like MEM sensors and precision converters and otherwise.
Is there a sweet spot in terms of applications that you guys really want to target this for?
I'll let you take that one, Kumar.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think we're looking at kind of the real-time sort of aspects. I don't know if there's ADI, we kind of focus on a number of different market segments: industrial, medical, consumer, healthcare, and so forth. And so I don't think there's a singular kind of market, but I would say kind of the type of applications that we're looking at. And there's a broad spectrum there, right? So it is, everything from, when you're actuating something in a hard real-time kind of nature, and the processing may be associated with that. And that could be for everything from something where, you're in an extremely, resource constrained power, memory, footprint, space, thermals, other things of that nature, to systems where we're talking, hundreds or gigabytes, terabytes, megabytes, the broad spectrum of data processing, and where we may be kind of one piece in a larger system as well. So
Is the expectation that Analog Devices offers a one-stop shop for these people in these applications that you're talking about? Or does this have to be more of an industry collaboration with other vendors as well?
I think it's a combination for ADI. I think there's some places that we will kind of be a one-stop shop, looking at, broader solutions inclusive of hardware platforms, system platforms, software, all the totality of that. And then there's going to be markets and segments where, that it's a combination of the industry, right? So, we're not going to be like necessarily the processing element on all systems. We recognize that, and that's one of the beauties of working in kind of an open ecosystem like Zephyr, like Linux, where, enabling our technologies in those areas allows for collaboration with other vendors that are maybe, focusing on the processing elements or providing that capability.
Very good. And when somebody's in there with a problem, is that problem typically solved by somebody in the community, or somebody at Analog Devices, or is it just whoever gets there first?
Probably a little bit of both. So
yeah, go ahead. I was
Maureen.
going to say the answer is both.
Okay, very good. Where would somebody go to get more information about these products and Code Studio itself?
Yeah, so I mean, going to analog.com, we launched as well kind of this fall our developer portal. So the combination of that, and then I'll say analog.com would be two places that people can go, and we'll kind of provide links, I'm sure, for those as part of with the podcast.
Is that the starting point for somebody? Is that the first thing that somebody should do, is log into CodeFusion Studio, or are there other things that should happen first?
Maureen, do you want to try to take a stab at that one?
I'd say, you could go ahead and start the developer portal and read the documentation that's provided there and download CodeFusion Studio and start playing right away.
Yeah, and I would say, like most vendors, we have eval boards and kits that are supported as part of CodeFusion. And so getting one of those, we've done some training kind of again at Embedded World around that. And so we're kind of growing sort of the content that we'll have there to kind of like, for people to get started based on whatever kind of project and product they're looking to build.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, both of you. This is really important for the audience. So I do appreciate you taking the time to educate me and everybody else.
Thanks for having us, Rich.
Thanks.
That was Kumar Gala, Distinguished Engineer in the Software and Digital Platforms Group, and Maureen Helm with the same title, Distinguished Engineer, Software and Digital Platforms Group. And I'm Rich Nass with Open Systems Media.